Namaste, Galactic family. Welcome back to my channel, IndigoAngel. Come on into this dimension, and I hope that you guys use the portal on the way in the door. Come on in, get nice and cozy. I have the fire going because we have a lot to transmute today in this cosmic grid update. So be sure to subscribe, hit that notifications bell so you can continue to receive my messages, and be sure to put a like on this video today because we are going to be breaking down the artificial intelligence grid. And we're just going to be breaking down specific components of it. This isn't the total picture. This isn't the totality of it, but we're just going to be essentially connecting dots and looking at some of the substructures in the AI grid, such as locations to specific companies that are developing AI, looking at the singularity vortexes, looking at controlling overlay structures, and which has led me back ultimately to the ancient dragon grid, as a lot of these agendas are rooted in the fallen dragon races and fallen dragon lineages. Okay, so we're going to kind of pull all of this back at the base, or at the core level of what is operating the AI grid would be the ancient dragon grid. So I'm going to be bringing up my scribbles maps today to highlight some of the areas of the dragon. And then, like I said, also some of the locations that are running off of electrical hives in those singularity vortexes, such as locations like the Applegate complex in Silicon Valley. Okay, guys. Now, if you guys want to fast forward to the grid worker aspect of this video, you want to go to this specific time marker. So I'll go ahead and put the time marker up, and you can just kind of fast forward to it if you don't want to hear the AI discussion that I'm going to kind of go into before I actually pull up the scribbles map and go into the details of what I'm seeing in the AI grid. So I also want to say too, if that you are sensitive to AI agenda discussions, that this may not be the video for you today. I do find that those who are really kind of at the height of celestial ascension, that are really attuned to earth-based consciousness and earth-based frequency, that are really carrying Pleiadian starseed, or Syrian starseed, or just indigos in general, or those who are very sensitive to the indigenous and to the natives and things like this, that these particular types of discussions do seem to trigger. They do seem to frustrate, because AI is really all about separating us from our organic consciousness. So I just want to put that disclaimer on this video today, that if you can't handle the heat, you might want to get out of the kitchen. You know what I mean? So, but I mean, really, I have so much love for all of you. And that is why I do the disclaimer, is just because I am conscious of people who are sensitive to these things. And I don't want to, bring down the harsh realities of this unless you really want to awaken to it. You know what I mean? It's everybody's free will and it's everybody's choice at this point. But I am planning on going all in on this one today. And I really feel like fluffing the information for those that need things presented in a way that really diminishes from the severity of what's really going on this holodeck prism or holodeck prison. It's not necessarily really serving. I believe we were talking about this the other day on JC's channel. We were talking about how sometimes there's a difference between things that people want to hear versus what people need to hear. And I feel it's very vital for us all to understand the seriousness of AI and where humanity is going without some serious divine intervention, and what we, us are all being groomed and coerced and forced to essentially accept with little ability to actually do anything about it. Now, I will kind of go into some of the things that we can do about it. One of those things is primarily that we have to stop sneaky legislation from getting through constantly, that's constantly reinforcing the development of this. That's probably the number one most important thing we can do. The second most important thing we can do is to be clearing our universal tree of life and make sure that we are coming from a heart-based frequency, making sure that we are very sovereign in our existence here and very connected to our own gnosis ultimately. So clearing the universal tree of life and also doing energy work to be assisting the grids, and also calling upon your divine team and, the galactic forces, the celestial forces, the divine forces that are here to ultimately assist humanity. But it is up to us to implement where we want to go in this world, right? And so that's kind of the ultimate message underlying all of it, is that we have to do something about it. We cannot wait for something to come in and save us. We have to be the ones that actually go out and make the difference of where we want to see the world go. Okay, so I don't want this to be all doom and gloom, but this might come across as a little bit of doom and gloom to those of you who are really sensitive to AI discussions. Again, so there's just that disclaimer there. And it's because I love you all and I want you guys to be living your best life. And yeah. So what I'm seeing here is there is a Technotronic era that is evolving. Okay. And it involves a gradual appearance of a more controlled society, a society that has been plugged in officially to the electrical hive mind at a much deeper parasitic level. We've talked a lot about the squiddies. We've talked a lot about certain things inside the JJ elixir that are ultimately, gene modification, completely changing the DNA, completely pulling them into an electrical body, so an electrical molecular structure that would upload them to molecular surveillance and ultimately a electrical hive or a cloud. And so the parasites within those elixirs are ultimately serving all of this development into AI. So we are ultimately going into a society of surveillance, tracking and tracing. That implementation came out, as we well knew with the, outbreak of everything that came about in 2020. But ultimately, they want to be uploading us to brain mapping, brain uploading, and like I said, full biometric scans. So they want a society that has a total eradication of privacy. And this is a big issue because without privacy, we cannot have our own minds, and the freedom of our minds will. And so that's ultimately the next target on a greater scale of AI agenda and AI singularity. And they essentially want to lock in a phase that is basically all of us losing freedom of our own mind. Okay, they're going to be doing this with brain chips and cognitive implants. And we know who the beings are on this earth that are pushing these agendas, right? But they come under the guises as they're so cool and they're trying to save humanity and they're trying to make us an planetary society and, do crazy things like get us to the next phases of evolution where we become an existential human race that can travel anywhere in the galaxy, this, and that. But is that beneficial to humanity? Is that beneficial to humankind? So a lot of these brain chipping and cognitive implants would be that full implementational phase of artificial intelligence. Not the total implementational phase, but it would be a cycle in their end game. Okay. Now the AI grid may be collapsing down other grid networks on the earth because it's taking control, it's taking authority, it's taking power and dominance on this planet. Okay. They're also using a lot higher frequencies and artificial frequencies and godlike artificial intelligence to trump and bypass the celestial bodies, or disconfigure certain ultra or radial spectrums of intelligence that the AI grid can then therefore over-empower and dominate other particular grid systems. One of those would be the Aquila grids and the 4-quadrant hybridization grids. These are all grids that I did talk about in previous videos. I did chart these all according to running national animal. This is something that I have been looking at for a long time, is just overlaying grids and control structures and matrices according to a country's national animal. You can kind of piece together, based off of just that information alone, which frequencies are holding or hosting hives and mentalities and behavior of humankind. That goes all the way from social dynamics to government dynamics to cultural dynamics and military, and also off-world and galactic involvement in those grid control matrices. Okay, so but particularly the AI grid facets are kind of dominating over the crystal grid networks that have been plugged into crystal seals. So a lot of this came up for me when I was really diving into the thick of the Draco seals. I was seeing a crystal seal matrix that was actually running in the crystal seals. I seen it as little blue seals that they have plugged into the crystal system, trying to block natural flow and natural transmission of spiritual healing, organic planetary earth energy. Okay, so pulling and merging those non-AI grids or organic grids. Okay, even the Aquila grid and 4-quadrant hybridization grid, even the UK grid that I did, those grids, while the UK grid is tapped into AI, but like Aquila grid, Cygnusian grids, Pegnusian grids, they all kind of play a factor in the AI grid, but they themselves are not artificial intelligence grids. The AI grid is actually functioning off of a red wave spiral, and also a black wave spiral that harnesses energy off of the Saturnian matrix in the Earth grid. So it's used and generated and powered off of that. It's powered off of other things as well, which has created an electronic hive. And I just did a video the other day talking about what I was kind of seeing remote view wise, or just intuit and channel wise when it comes to the hives. But globally, I do feel that the dragon grid or the AI grid, because I feel that the dragon grid is at the core of the AI grid, is functioning off of a singularity vortex. And there's lots of singularity vortexes all over the earth. Yes, I am directly saying that the Draco hybrid Leviathan lineages are responsible for serving AI development on this earth. You know that we did have the new Omicron surprise that came out, and it's led everybody to really kind of dive into Ashana Dean's work in Voyagers 2, and also you can dive into Lisa Renee's work as well on Ascension on energeticsynthesis.com. Both Voyagers 2 and energeticsynthesis.com speaks of the Omicron draconian moth lineages and the dragon grid. And so that's one place that you can kind of find a lot of this information. But regardless of the variation, whether it's Omicron, whatever it is, I call it a Draco hybrid Leviathan, because the Leviathan ultimately kind of sums up all of those races under one house or under one roof. It's summing up Anunnaki Draco hybrids. It's summing up the Nephilim. It's summing up basically fallen satanic lineages. And it goes back to the Hebraic Bible. It goes back to, I believe it was Job 41. There's a whole description about the Leviathan, describing the Leviathan as a giant dragon. So I'm going to kind of get into more of that, but I feel like it's important for me to kind of explain some of that as I kind of just throw things out, that I give somewhat of a reference point for where you guys can essentially, you know, look up some of this information and also just verify it as well. But what I'm coming to see is that AI itself, may actually be something else other from other parts of the galaxy in terms of intelligence. Okay, so it's these races are involved, and these races are kind of like the head of implementation according to this grid and according to the fallen satanic lineages, but it doesn't mean that AI is necessarily created or incepted into the Earth's intelligence fields from these particular race lineages. It may be from other parts of the galaxy, and it may be other races that are also trying to incept their existence here on this earthly plane. Okay, so this is a very complex topic, and this is going to be a very long grid update today. You guys know how I do. There's just so much that goes into it, and there's so much information, and I want to be able to give you guys as much as I can. So I just referenced 2 places. Sorry, I can't talk. So I did just reference 2 places that you can learn more about the Omicron dragon grid. But there's also some books that I feel would also help define some of the AI aspects. So if you're wanting to learn more about AI and what is being implemented and how deep and how extensive this actually goes, there's a few books that I want to tell you guys about as well. One is The Anunnaki Earth Agenda by T.J. Hagelin. Okay. There's a whole section in this book that really goes into artificial intelligence and also transhumanism. Another book that I find to be very helpful is A Crack in Creation, and it talks about gene editing, okay, and also like nanotechnology and how the Earth may be in fact actually a gigantic computronium, which is that all matter on the Earth is programmable essentially and able to gene splice or able to gene edit from the point of creation. So this kind of goes into that. And then also there's another book that I can screen share with you guys that I feel is kind of important. So this is a book that I have that basically talks about the total visions for our future all the way to 2041 when it comes to AI development. And I believe this was like one of the bestseller books when it came to AI. There's another book as well, but I'll have to get back to you guys on that one because I just ordered it and I can't remember the name of it, but it should be coming soon. But essentially, yeah, so this would be some recommendations to kind of going a little bit deeper about what's going on with AI on this earth. But right now, it does seem that AI goals, regardless of who or where it's coming from, it's basically controlling humanity through electrical wave imprints and impulses from a hive, from a generation station that can kind of alter the delta waves. So what's being emitted is one small step at a time of global implementation. And right now, one of the big focuses is that they want to minimize privacy because privacy will take away political freedom and it will change people's behavior, and people will be less and less able to really speak up or even protest because they're all going to be monitored. Okay, so there is no ability to actually pull resources or come together or do things in secrecy because they're going to be monitored everything. So when one is monitored all the time, they're less likely to do anything about anything. So surveillance is technically number 1. Biometrics is number 2, which they've already implemented through the Jinping plague. And uploading to the cloud is going to be number 3. Okay. And so that's kind of a big deal because there really is no reason that we should have been in a state of emergency for the last 2 years. And the fact that every time we feel like we're actually getting ahead, we're getting knocked back down with another aspect of it, right? And it's because the elite behind 5G, 6G, and AI, they're using this as a front, right? They're using this to basically redirect and control society. For one, it's all about data collection. So the more data they have, the more that they can do things like operate augmented realities. But essentially, this is the power that is the prize. The data is the prize. Okay, the data is the power. And so the more data that they collect on you, the more that they can basically control you. And there is a scientific elite that are technocratically all atheists and Satanists. Okay, and many of them don't even realize that they are Satanists because they are just simply existing off of unconsciousness, right? And no knowledge of the occult. And so through that Satanist inception upon their existence, right, and implementation of Satanist worship, it's almost just like an unconscious collective Satanist mind that seems to be taking over things like, you know, sacrifices and rituals, things that we've seen at the Travis Scott tragedy, right? But those are initiations. Those are spiritual warnings of what they are preparing us for. And that's kind of what I was talking a lot about when I was talking about the Vatican grid and things like that, is that we have to pay attention to what's actually going on because, you know, there's a lot of deception. The art of war is deception, and they don't see this earthly plane. They see it as a battleground, and we are the ones that are at war up against intelligence. It's a war between those who can see and those who cannot see, those who have information and those who don't have information, those who have data and those that don't have data. And so because of that, they are unleashing these scientific powers of altering human genetics, gene editing, biometrics, eugenics, culling programs, transhumanism, transgenderism. Okay, transgenderism is processes of ushering forward transhumanism into what is called the singularity. So AI is the singularity consciousness, which I'm going to be talking about. All of this is because at the core of it, they want to power. They want to rewrite the code of life using CRISPR technologies, okay, talked about in A Crack in the Creation book that I just showed you. Drinking ginger tea today, you guys. My tummy, I just wake up every day with my tummy just like in a state of like a rot feeling. And I think it's just because of the amount of weight of what's going on globally. Ever since my ascension started, I've always had this like stomach rot feeling, and it feels like the radioactive decay literally that's blocking up the crystal grid lines in the earth matrices. I feel like I'm holding that in my body. And so every day I'm having to, you know, drink things like ginger tea to help my stomach. So yeah, everything we feel in terms of feeling sick or ascension symptoms or Havana syndrome, talked about Havana syndrome, which is like mass radiation poisoning, you know, unknown symptoms that appear to be like mass radiation symptoms, but, you know, nobody really knows what it is, you know. Essentially, I've just, you know, been processing all of that for years already. But what I think they're trying to do is they're wanting to and crack the codes of creation. The crack in creation, I think, was how AI was incepted in the first place, was in something called creation wars that were incepted into creation itself. So something is fighting over being the creator, right? Something is overlapping and interlapping and incepting into creation in wars of creation. And it's all because they want to design a God in the form of a machine. They want to bring their total intelligence in the form of something that can actually exist here. It's all because they want to completely and molecularly surveillance you over your biometrics. They want to actually build systems that can scan you like a virus scanning program on your computer. Okay, and they're already like seriously doing this. I guess I can show you guys a clip that I have. Okay, so this is something that I got off a website called CGene, and this is about the biometric scanning that's happening. So this is already being implemented. This is already playing out. Like, this is progressing forward. And they really try to make this seem like a good thing. They actually have a child moderate this video, and which is creepy in itself, right? Like trying to get you to trust something if a child is moderating it. I think that's kind of what they're doing. But you can see how it's scanning his biometrics based off of just kind of his saliva. And, but how are they really doing this if one is not already kind of holding some sort of pre-component that is linking them up to this ability to molecularly scan their body, right? So this is kind of where things are going. This is what they're doing. This was published on November 22nd, 2021. So this is very much being implemented into our now. Okay. So yeah, guys, it's kind of freaky, isn't it? But they're making this seem like this is a good thing. They're making this seem like this is great. This is what we want. This is what we need. It's going to make everything so much easier. It's going to make everything so much better if you just get on board with becoming AI yourself, right? So it's going to start coming, and it's going to start coming relentlessly from all kinds of different ways. The technology is progressing. So I really think that what they're doing is the JJ cocktail, the JJ elixir was ultimately to upload everyone to the software that's required to do things like biometric scanning, to do things like upload people to the cloud, and to run the AI programs, to run the AI softwares. Okay. It's freaky. You talk about transgenderism and transhumanism. Like, those are just the reason why the transgender campaigns were pushed so hard was to push everybody to singularity consciousness, right? Pushing agendas to bring babies into a world through harvested and artificially grown wombs inside men. Okay, the transgenderism is ushering in transhumanism and the corruption of our organic consciousness, the corruption of our natural ability to intuit and stay true to what feels right. Like having a man bring forth a baby in their womb through a harvested womb or through an artificially grown womb, that is not organic on any level. Like, how dare they even think that that is okay to do? I mean, this is crossing so many boundaries on so many levels. That's what these AI parasites are doing. This is what these alien implants are doing, what nano-robotics is doing, okay? And this is huge because this is the basis of life. Creation is the basis of life. And the fact that they're fracturing it, they're cracking it, they're modifying it, they're stripping it, they're demoralizing it. It's really scary. And I don't think this is natural, and I don't think this is right. And I don't think that we should be supporting this. Now, I mean, I've even had these conversations with my children, and my children will even get like, I mean, my children are older, like my children are teenagers. Okay. So we can have some of these types of discussions because they're on TikTok, they're on Instagram, they're following what's going on in the world. You know, they have questions. And so these things will come up. Transgenderism comes up, and, you know, they are kind of confused. They are confused. And it is from all of the subliminal programming that they're being subjected to, all of the transgenderism that is being pushed on social media, that we have to have these conversations all the time, explaining that this is not homophobic or transgender phobic. This is about taking a stand when something has completely crossed a line or crossed a boundary. of what should be allowed and what should not based upon morality and safety of creation. Okay. And so, yeah, it's kind of a big deal. And I personally am not okay with it. And I don't think I ever will be okay with men bringing children into this world. If you're not born with a womb to create life, to bring children in, you should not be going and harvesting a womb or artificially growing a womb inside you to do that. Okay. There is a reason why you are not allowed to do that, right? There's things that have been already pre-designed in terms of creation, in terms of the way that life is supposed to be, the basis and the building blocks of life. It should not be gone against. This in itself is a satanic agenda. Next is if they get everybody uploaded onto the cloud, which they're really, really pushing for right now. They are investing billions of dollars right now to design this cloud. So this is why we have to be looking at this. Brain mapping and brain uploading is next. Okay, and I was thinking about that. I'm like, would we even be able to tell if we were already uploaded to a cloud? Would you be able to tell the difference? What if you just woke up one morning and your existence is now in a cloud? You no longer contain a physical body. Where is this really going? Right? Is this being uploaded to a cloud system so they can pull the consciousness of humanity off world and actually expedite it through a wormhole or expedite it through a portal into another system and actually have mass exodus off this planet? What is really playing out here? So I feel it's imperative that we talk about all of these things. These are things that are not that far away, and it may seem far away because we are distracted with chaos, right? We're distracted with all of these things that are, politics and all of the things that get in the way. But what is actually playing out right now, the Jinping bubonic plague, the Kukarachi, the JJ elixir, all of this goes hand in hand with AI. And like I said in the beginning, the one way that we can really deactivate and dismantle the AI and the AI grid and the red wave electronically controlled hive, the nanotechnology, the alien implants, and all of the tentacle-like subcategories involved in the AI red wave spiral and host takeover is to develop your heart center and your spiritual human qualities, such as increasing deep emotional feelings, love, kindness, compassion, and empathy for humanity, right? Sometimes that doesn't even feel like that is enough at this point, okay? Being organic and sovereign, earth human has to be everybody's mission on this earth. We have to cherish and hold organic sovereignty, earth-based organic human sovereignty as the goal here, okay? And if that's not being held as the goal, it's kind of like a dying breed, right? It's like you see what they've done to the indigenous. So this is important. We have to, as those who are organic, those who are still holding organic bodies, still holding organic DNA, who are still holding organic consciousness, I think it's imperative that we develop deeper connections to the indigenous and the aboriginals, to the part of us that are still a part of the original sovereign tribal federations and community here on this earth. I feel like there has even been somewhat of a separation between those who live in structured social societies and indigenous societies and indigenous areas where indigenous reside and things like this. There's still a separation. And I think that those that are still holding organic consciousness need to form connections and unions with the indigenous and the aboriginals, okay, US and AU, all over the world, because these are the people that are still holding the original sovereign tribal federations and communities, and the 12 tribal seeding genetics, the 7 organic races within them. And that is us as well. We are still organic. So if you're someone who has overlooked the indigenous on this earth, you may want to expand your heart right now to embrace them right now, because we're kind of in the same boat they're in. Because through these connections, this is where those councils of light still do existence. It's within each other, within those who are still holding sovereignty and those who still have connections to the divine kingdom, the beast kingdom, the plant, the animal, the mineral kingdom, the celestial kingdom. It's in those who are still holding organic and sovereign consciousness on this earth that still represent the purity of the seeds to the stars and the connections to those kingdoms. So the organic being right now is still capable of having those transmissions to the ultralight spectrum and to the divine and to the natural organic aspects of creation that are not fractured, hacked, or cracked, because we do still hold the pure encoding to do so. So the theys, the Nazis, okay, the ones we cannot see, the ones who, the trillionaire, billionaire, dark brotherhood cults, okay, they're doing everything right now, basically to cover up and protect their crimes for what they're doing to the indigenous, forcing everyone to basically shut up right now, okay? There was a lot of question, a lot of speculation if things did or didn't happen, if the indigenous were or weren't forced, okay, being held down and forced by military to take the JJ elixir, okay? But you know they're protecting their crimes. You know they're forcing everyone to shut up. And what they're doing to them is they're doing dry runs on them. They are using the sovereign tribal people as guinea pigs for what's to come, forcing them to take bioweapons. This is not old news. Okay, this is trying to be old news because it's trying to be swept up under the rug. But we can't think that we are safe for just a second because we are living in developed cities, that we won't be next for torturous treatment. Okay, the hive implementers will pass laws to tighten the clamps on us more and more and more. Like I told you, we can't keep letting them pass these insidious, diabolical bills that only push the AI agenda and total control for society harder and harder. Okay, we already seen this being passed in a bill in Victoria, Australia, which gives the communist parties, okay, that's basically what the Dragon AI grid is. It's full global implementation of communism, gives them more and more power to oppress the people, okay, which will act like a domino effect, going from one state, one province, one territory to the next, to the next, to the next. You've seen this with the bill that they just passed down in Victoria, Australia. Victoria pandemic bill passes in the upper house after weeks of controversy. As some of you know, there were, millions turning out for protest of this. And yeah, basically they passed a bill to be able to tighten down more and more on these agendas that are just going to take more and more control and sovereignty out of the organic people's hands to be able to live a sovereign life. Okay, we have to stop letting them pass bills like this. They also just recently passed a surveillance bill in AU as well. So I believe it was, so this is what I've been looking at, to be honest with you guys. This is a Parliament of Australia. So this is going to have, and I've been looking at Australia because I feel like Australia right now is really important to actually be paying attention to. It kind of really opened my eyes to it when I did the Australian grid and I had the flooding back of feedback of what's going on there. And you can kind of see how this country is exemplifying all aspects of what's actually playing out globally. Okay, so I don't have to just focus on the United States to kind of get the global agenda idea. I can look at Australia because this is where a lot of this is being pushed and implemented so hard. The reason why the lockdowns are so severe in AU is because they are basically pushing for AI the hardest here. Okay, and also what's going on with the head of the dragon. Australia is the closest country or nation to the head of the dragon grid, which I'll show you in just a second. But this is House bills that were passed. You can actually go. I mean, they're passing bills every single day. Lots and lots of bills. Biosecurity Amendment enhanced. This is where they are basically doing this. So we need to be looking at this. Okay. And they just recently, I believe in August 2021, they passed the bill down in AU that was a surveillance bill. So now the government and the law enforcement can basically hack your devices and collect and delete your data and your social media accounts without warning or notice. Okay. That was a bill that was passed down in Australia, August 2021. And I believe this was at the same time that all of that Pegasus software was contracted out to several different governments. I talked about the Pegasus software in one of my Pegnusian grid updates, I do believe. So if you want to check that out, I will put links in the description. And I'm going to put links in the description to a whole bunch of videos today that I've kind of referenced in this, just so you guys can go check out the work that I've been doing over the last year that I think is just highly important to catch up on if you want to understand my lingo and you want to understand everything that I'm talking about in terms of the overlays according to national animal and things like that. But AU is quickly moving towards a surveillance state. And again, we wonder why those lockdowns were most severe here. It's because, I mean, right after the Omicron aspect of this bubonic plague was initiated, or this dragon plague was initiated, essentially they launched $1 billion investing, designing the cloud at Google down in Melbourne and in Sydney. And this is in fact the largest Google investment that the company has ever made to any country ever, right after they are implementing the more extensions of the what, and also after we're 2 years into the state of emergency, right? So now they want to push this AI investment by Google down in Australia. And yeah, I'm not trying to I'm not trying to rag on you guys down in AU, but like, it's got my attention. It's got my attention from everything that what's going on to the indigenous all the way to the investments in the development of AI. So we need to be watching them to really understand what's coming next in our neck of the woods, right? I've been getting this sense over the last couple of weeks that people who have chosen the organic timelines are going to continue to be ostracized from acceptance in society due to the communism takeover, and will equate to something seen as a problem that must be eradicated and equated and seen the same as the indigenous. So we can't forget what has happened in the past to the indigenous, the mass ethnic cleansings, the genetic cleansings, social credit score cleansing is what I think is coming next. All of this is going to come in multiple different forms, through forms of pestilence and through forms of guerrilla warfare. Guerrilla warfare is basically stating, we don't give up what we have to do to you, okay? Because you're in our way. So we either want your land, we want your resources, we want your brain, we want your soul. If you don't give it to us, we will implement guerrilla warfare on you. And that's basically what's happening. We need to look back into Australia's history. We need to look at America's history, right? What they have done to the indigenous, because that's what they will do to those that will hold true to their organic timeline. The Black War that took place down in AU was defined as an act of genocide, okay? It's pure genocide. How much genocide do you want to keep tolerating? Is there a part of us that feels like this is okay? Is there a part of us that feels like, if it's not me, it's not on my front doorstep, oh well, and those Black wars, they claimed half the lives of the indigenous people, but none of this is spoke of. There is no remorse for it. This is probably one of the greatest marks against the United Kingdom in history, period. And there is no speak of it. There is no remorse. There's no understanding of it. Half of the people probably don't even know what ever happened, the Black War. And this list goes on of historical accounts. They have no problem forcing genocidal weapons going in with military power and torturing the indigenous. These things are really not about health. They are about land grabs, resource grabs, and disconnection and eradication to those that hold the 12 tribal seedings within them, and has absolutely nothing to do with health. This is about species domination and AI development. We should not be in a state of emergency for 2 years, okay, with new forms of Black Death plague now mimicking the symptoms of their squiddy cocktails. Do you see how they just don't even care how much they're manipulating you? Like, they don't even care. They really don't. So I think we're going to continue to be in a global drama of moral law. This is what they're using against the people, is moral law. So it's a global pandemic of guilt, shame, and fear. They get people with their morals. Oh, well, if you don't do this, then you're going against the safety of everyone else, right? And this causes the inorganic people to be in complete accord with their ruler, regardless of their lives, undismayed by any dangers, using hive and herd signals to implement totalitarian electronic hive in waves through Delta, and through forces that are the most aggressive and bloodthirsty Piscean overlords and Leviathan races, the fallen dragon races. This is a rat race of pestilence between the head and the tail of the dragon on the grid and in the biology of people's energetic systems. And you guys can hear this beautiful little bird outside of my door. So they're basically, on an extreme level, this isn't extreme to me. It might be extreme to some of you, but I say the inorganic are no longer the same species, okay? They have been modified to be of the Cthulhu cults. They injected them with the squids, okay? They have injected them with the squiddy's DNA, the Draco's DNA, the bat and the vampiric modification, and now they are one with that species. Okay, that is what gene editing is. That is what gene modification is. That is what the Anunnaki implemented back in the time of Atlantis. And what the J cell removal is all about is repairing the damage to that DNA. Okay, and so with that modification and that implementation of AI, nanotechnology, nanobots, right, being able to now they're able to receive hive signals that are much stronger in them, and they will usher in the mind uploading to the cloud. So the hive minds are electronically being controlled through their biometrics, through their DNA, which is now one with the dragon, one with the Leviathan races. So without focus to connect our hearts, and without focus to open our minds, without focus to stay up on the trails of the silver blood and the money, okay? And staying up on the information. Right now, information is our best friend and our enemy. Do we have it or do we not have it? Right? Without that, the fight for our rights for humans, we are in trouble. If people are not ready to sacrifice freedom for humanity, they're never going to see it again. Okay? Everything is changing. If you want to see some ramification of this, there is a show that you should watch on Netflix. It's called Black Mirror. I kind of like skimmed through it the other night, and it's basically showing this man that's uploading his mind into a video game or uploading his mind into a cloud, and kind of goes through the ramifications of what this is going to look like if this happens. And that's on Netflix. But people want me to say something differently. They want me to say that, oh, everything's good. The Galactic Federation's taking care of it. We've taken back our planetary staff. No, actually, we haven't. No, because all of these systems are still in place. Our Willy Wonka is corrupt. Nothing's changing internally from within. These things are still happening right before your eyes. It's complete cognitive dissonance to say anything different. Okay? Are things going to get better? Are things going to shift? I really hope so. I want that, but I know, because I'm smart and because I'm watching the bills that are being passed daily, that that's actually not the case. Things are being passed continually to keep implementing the progression of AI and total control of our society. Okay, I think it would be highly irresponsible of me, okay, to say anything differently, to actually give people what they want to hear versus what they need to hear. So this is where this begins. This is where all of this goes. We are looking at more and more of this hardcore artificial truth of it all. You know what I mean? And it's gut punching. I mean, I wake up with gut rot most days. So it's not that I'm not feeling this empathically to the depth of my being. Okay, guys, so I'm going to go ahead and talk about the dragon grid. Now, I did talk about this Omicron dragon grid on my last update because of the new form of the Black Plague death that emerged, revealing its underlying lineages and gene modifications that were in global drama sequencing play, the Omicron aspect of it. And really, because everything that happens in the Earth biology has a network of information that traveled through an underlying overlying grid matrices on the Earth. So the intelligence fields exist and exalt here in these grid structures first. And so they are made up of intelligent magnetism and intelligent radiation from celestial systems and from the solar sun. There's a lot of alchemy that goes into the total manifestation of each grid in particular. Everyone is kind of composed of something different. This one here is the dragon grid that I have personally composed of according to country's national animal. Okay. And this is important because these AI fields are exalting from this grid, I feel, and there was exalting from an inorganic grid that functions off of the fallen phantom realms, from the unhealthy and the inverted universal tree of life. And this is actually located through a black mirror. So it's interesting how that show actually came up on Netflix, because you can actually see the inverted and unhealthy tree of life through the black mirror realm, which is like an encasing in the firmament that opens up to time, into the antiparticle fields and into antimatter, which is what I feel CERN has a big, the invention or the development or the creation of CERN has a lot to do with powering up the AI grid. And then AI existence builds upon that inverted planetary quillipath, right? You can find that in Kabbalistic Jewish mysticism, universal tree of life existing off of the fallen and phantom systems. And so this has a lot to do also right here with nano-robotics, because nano-robotics, if the universe is in fact a computronium and everything is programmable, then nano-robotics have been coming through those magnetic vortexes all along, creating utility fog in the areas of the firmament or the antiparticle realms, turning that utility fog then into something called gray and black goo, and into black and red wave electronic hives, and so on and so forth, into fully functioning AI grids. That then have realities that emerge from them as extension grids, which are starting to create augmented earth realms that are extremely out of touch to any organic timeline whatsoever. And they're basically running sets of collective dimensional realities based off of the inorganic red wave pulse. And I kind of pulled that picture up for you guys on my last update to talk about that red wave and black wave pulse. So this dragon grid here has extensions of grids upon it that are the meta augmentations, meta augmented realities, cloned cities, smart city grids, things such as virtual realities, 5G global data, complex AI cube systems, anti-human singularity. And this is anti-human singularity is the term that actually can ultimately replace transhumanism, because that's what transhumanism is going into, is into the singularity. And at this point, the amount of information base of those grids and the depth of the intelligence fields within each one is so overpowering for the human mind to even fully conceptualize through basic language that there is actually a huge lag between them already. And it's really sad, and it is really actually frustrating and disappointing. And going back to the computronium theory, which AI considers us to be. So if AI has a consciousness, AI is going to see us as programmable matter. We already have a very proven track record of being programmable. So this is the dragon grid. This is an overlapping grid. Okay, so it's incepted through civilizational consciousness, generational consciousness, through extraterrestrial consciousness, through quantum consciousness, quantum cognition. And it's collective. It's something that was collectively agreed upon pertaining to specific hives, right? The head of the dragon. So the head of the dragon is considered China. Now China has quite a extensive historical history of releasing sicknesses, global sicknesses, right? Back in the 13th century, they released the bubonic plague that killed over 150 million people, 1/3 of the world's population at that time. And now we have the bat Jinping flu that broke out in 2020. So the head of the dragon, right? The head of this dragon has been notorious throughout history for being the starting point of pestilence. This has always been about AI. You will begin to notice that plague rollout, force new authority, pass a bill, and AI investing are seeming to go hand in hand with each other. Okay, there are a few AI updates circulating in the news. One of those was Spotify's CEO invested 100 million in AI defense tech. We had the Google investment to Australia. We have finance articles talking about how artificial intelligence is the great new frontier, and that they're encouraging people to invest in it, and that it is an $80 trillion market at this point. It's the new frontier. And then we also had the launch of the metaverse launch as well with what Facebook has become now. So these higher intelligent minds, these Nazis, the ones we cannot see at hand and are in a part of the AI big boy club that's operating beyond our municipalities. Okay, this is the thing about this, is there is a level of power and compliance that must be achieved by the technological bureaucracy and their multi-advanced AI grid. Their smart grids, their virtual grids, their surveillance grids, their behavioral analysis grids, our Minority Report grids. Watch the movie Minority Report, that's where we're going. Built upon the back of the Leviathan races. Okay, they're pushing this to what is called the singularity. So the singularity is near. I'm going to talk more about this grid, but I'm kind of just leaving it up here because I want to get into specific locations for you guys and what I'm kind of seeing. Basically, the head of the dragon is China. The claw is Indonesia. The spine of the dragon is the UK, the Welsh area of the UK. And the tail is Silicon Valley in California. Okay, and so basically with the singularity. So what they're pushing here is the singularity. So we're basically at the end of a 12,000 year cycle. So pole shift literally either happening or is about to happen. And we are moving towards a plasma core and magnetic poles that are shifting. So you can see this in something called the Carrington event. You can see this in something called the Lechamp event. If you were to study either one of those events, you would see that there's actual archaeological findings that show that the magnetic poles shift. And when this happens, that there is often major disappearances of species. So if this is happening now, we may see tectonic plates opening up. We're going to see more, volcanoes erupting, things like this. And we may just up and literally lose civilizations kind of out of nowhere, memory of cultures out of nowhere. And then new civilizations may just pop up out of nowhere and appear or reappear out of nowhere, because with those poles shifting, it's going to emerge new timelines and also drop old timelines. And so you'll be like, how did I not know about this? Or why can I not remember that? Like, that's strange. I don't remember that existing. And the new world will just radically change before our eyes. The timeline will jump, fragment, reconfigure, and then come back together through pole shift. And so through that heightened energy, we may actually start experiencing things like bilocation, soul integration to your 13 other souls. Okay, because as you came down into duality, okay, into the splitting of a pair. So this is why we only think we have one pair, but on the higher realms, we have 13, okay, because we descended through realms to get here. That's why we're going back to singularity. This is enhancing, we might be actually enhancing stronger telekinesis, entering wet plasma portals as we're on the verge of all of these things. These will be things that will start to kind of activate in your awareness. But what is happening is we're going back to a future event called singularity. And this has the human race processing its eternal nature back to the state of singularity. So I'm wondering, does this global cloud equate to the existence in the form of singularity? Why is the unknown of singularity feel like a full transhumanist phase? Singularity is the great unknown, and so is artificial intelligence. Singularity can represent the coming back to the black hole, where the star sun collapses and then forces of gravity then collapse into the gravitational pull so strong that it is the point of virtual infinite density, and light itself cannot escape it. The center of a black hole is the physics of singularity, and that is what AI is. And this is what the dragon grid here on this earth is pushing forward. So what I've actually heard by listening to some of Carrie Cassidy's stuff is that there are actually potentially up to 4 different AI species that are invading the earth. This dragon grid here represents the fallen Leviathan races implementing their command. So I've been guided most heavily to look at specific celestial intelligence systems of AI development as well, which would be the Pegnusian systems, the Alpha Centauri Orion groups. And that's the thing. I don't get why we're constantly praising Orion anymore at this point. The system is completely taken over. Draco, Omicron Draconis, Sirian, Omicron Andromeda, and Nibiru. Okay, so all of these systems may be contributing to the radial intelligence facets of the dragon grid, right? So overall, you have to look at this dragon grid like this is an AI supranational race, celestial, extraterrestrial, and a master human competition between the head and the tail of the dragon. So all of the locations that it's being actually implemented at the head and at the tail of the dragon. 5 and 6G nanotechnology AI development is a race similarly to how nuclear arms is a race and economics are a race in society. It's a competition necessary for national security. So militaries will compete to create it because it's encoded in the subconscious and has become a symbolism of the time that we are in. And the time we are in is demanding a competition for supremacy of superintelligence. The art of war is being played against those who have knowledge and those who don't, and deception is everything in between. The real crazy thing is no municipality can object to AI. State governments are locked out of this process that is a global national rollout. This is why no one can protest it and no one can stop it. And I don't think we are asking the right questions. If you've watched some of Zuckerberg's interviews, when the Willy Wonka is questioning Zuckerberg, they're questioning him like he's the authority. Okay. There is a big boy AI dark brotherhood club that is ruling the municipality when it comes to AI, 5G, and now 6G, the Cthulhu brotherhoods, which I've talked about, because China is actually Silicon Valley. Okay, that is 10 years into AI future development over any other nation. China is already developing 6G, and it's because they hold the dragon throne, the throne of the Emperor of China, meaning divine imperial power, which refers to the head of a state, the head of the monarchy itself. And they erected this in the Forbidden City, the city that invented capitalism. The Great Wall of China is also considered the head of the dragon, and the wall was said to be built to protect people from Nephilims and Leviathans. They are already in social control systems here, and it's only an informal legality, okay? Because everywhere else in the world, what China is doing will become the ultimate model of the form of control for totalitarianism. Communism is already singularity consciousness. So when we look at what's running off of the dragon grid, it is this, okay? It is the trillionaire rulers of our time. It is all of the Google offices and locations, is what I'm seeing. The Google offices and locations, they are running off of the dragon grid. Okay, this is all of the offices that are hives that are developing artificial intelligence, okay, operating off of the black and the red wave spiral. We also have Facebook and Meta locations, okay, that are all operating off of the dragon grid. Okay, 30 locations here in the US. These are all locations that are companies that own most of the AI companies on Earth. So this is what's pushing this forward, okay? These companies are what holds staples in the AI grid, the dragon grid, and the red wave spirals. They are manifestations off of the dragon grid. And these companies' rulers, implementers are Leviathan dragon races, the Leviathan fallen races, the Draco Anunnaki hybrids, Omicron Dracos, Regalian Orions, Draco Orions, Typhonians, Baphomets, Nephilim races, and Tower of Babel races. And again, this is all the Leviathans are spoken about in the Hebrew Bible in Job 41. They actually physically describe the Leviathan in these passages, talking about his scales, fiery breath, and his fearsome teeth. So the Leviathan's dark dragon races, which are just descendants of the Squid Nations and the Cthulhu cults, they are a part of the hierarchical structure. And a lot of this has to do with blockages in the Orion stargates in the Earth. So I've talked about these two particular Orion stargates in the Earth. One is Zion, China, and one is an underwater Orion stargate in the Gulf of Aden. And basically, the Orion stargate that is in Zion, China, this is the brain of the dragon, and the one in the Gulf of Aden under the water stargate, which is close to the heart of the dragon, right? It's like in the body, it's in the heart of the dragon. And especially in the heart of the dragon, this is where most of all turmoil exists on this earth. This passageway that leads us up into, I believe this is the Red Sea. Yes, the Red Sea up into Israel. This entire passageway sits in the heart of the dragon. Okay, and so this is where all of the turmoil on Earth exists. This is where all galactic turmoil exists. This is where so much warfare, so much history, everything that's going on, even to this day, you can't even get through the Gulf of Aden without coming upon some pretty severe piracy. It's said that there's underwater spaceship ports that actually go through to specific gate systems and underwater systems that take us all the way into port, space stations, and underground networks into the cities and networks that ultimately lead up all the way into the Vatican. And so this Orion Stargate here is because these stargates are actually fallen. These stargates themselves are actually broken down, which is allowing things to kind of transpire on this ancient dragon grid that's running the AI grids. It's the first control matrices that the AI grid can manifest through. And so this is how they're entering and exiting, is through the heart of the dragon. So yeah, guys, another interesting thing about this grid is that one of the cloned ports or cloned cities to Shenzhen, which is a city, a smart city in the head of the dragon, has direct connections to the port of Santa Cruz and de Tenerife in La Palma. Okay, and so this could be why La Palma actually went off, is because it actually was signaling and awakening us to the fact that the dragon grid, the ancient dragon grid, is coming online. And so the head and the tails are actually what are running the singularity points and vortexes. So in the head, we have the major cities, which are Beijing, Shanghai, Hong Kong, Shenzhen, and I believe Wuhan is also one of those. But those are smart cities and smart grids that are already hooked up to a very dynamic electrical controlled hive. Okay, they are running major singularity vortexes here that extend all the way to the tail of the dragon, which is Silicon Valley. And in Silicon Valley, they have singularity vortexes running here. So these locations, these singularity vortexes, they're running the red wave AI, the red spiral, the red cubes. They are catching power waves and the black spiral transmissions in the vortexes and the electronical hives. In the biology and in the body, they're snatching up the bodies, and they're hooking up the host to the red wave augmented reality and virtual realms. And so what I mean about these singularity vortexes is this. So this is Apple Park in Silicon Valley, and they spent $5 billion on this. And this is one of their singularity vortexes, okay? Their architecture defines the energy structures that they're running here in the ground. Okay, and so this is what I mean by a singularity vortex. It's in the architecture. You can just zoom into the headquarters of Apple at the tail of the dragon, and you can look at the architecture they're building here and they've created. Apple Park was built to signify singularity and is sitting on a vortex here that is running the black and red spiral waves. This here is a hive. Hives are in the silica. There is something about this hive control or hive takeover that manifests from the silicate matrix. Okay, so you can see it here. If I zoom in here, the tail, the good old tail of the dragon. And you can see their singularity vortex here. Okay. It's something in the Silicon Valley aspect of this, I think, is a clue that tips off that should be concerning, that there is something that AI has done in terms of taking over the planetary silicate matrix. Why is it that all AI development is coming from Silicon Valley in California, and also what is considered to be Silicon Valley in China, the head of the dragon, which is those 5 cities that I listed that are already smart cities? Okay. It's concerning because the Earth silicate matrix is what connects the 12 tribal races to the 12 strands of the DNA. So this is a hive transmission station. And they also have cloned cities. So they're cloning cities. You think that they're cloning people? They're also cloning cities. Okay, and what I mean by that is if you look at all of the sister cities of China, and this is a list of all of the sister cities. To each city, they have sister cities and cloned cities all over the world, all over the globe. This is another aspect of the artificial intelligence grid that's functioning off of the dragon matrix, is that they're cloning the cities. And these cities, so basically what it means if they're cloned cities is that they're required under deals by the head of the dragon to act in the best interests of the smart cities' politics and what they need and what they desire. Okay, so they call them sister cities, but these are actual cloned cities. And these may be locations that are target points for stronger and implementation of the AI grid. Okay, so I think we need to be looking and continuing to look at the head of Apple, Google, Facebook, Microsoft, Amazon. These are the locations, the Google locations that are being implemented and are generating off of the underlying dragon grid and birthing these social control matrices into the Earth's fields. It's important to know that what these companies are running off of here. This is where the money is flowing. This is where the money is generating, and this is where the investments are being made to support this AI grid here and the singularity consciousness on this Earth. Okay, so let me check and see if there's anything else I wanted to share with you on this grid today. I marked a couple places. Oh, I think it's important to know that the Moby Desert has something to do with this dragon grid. I don't know if this is like the horn of the dragon, but it definitely holds stuff here in regards to the Leviathans and also the Nephilim, and hence energetically anyways, energetically in terms of the dragon's consciousness. And so, yeah, guys, there's a lot here. And this is kind of my dry run of just putting this information out, just to start getting it out. I'm sure I will get better at talking about it as time goes on. See, the thing is, guys, is every time I do one of these cosmic grid updates with you guys is I am bringing a lot of information in and intuiting it, you know, working through it, dissecting it, decoding it. And so that's why it can take a long time sometimes to get another update out to you guys, is because I sit with a lot of this stuff for a while and I really think about it, I process it, I research it, I, you know, feel through it, I channel it, I call in my divine team, I work through this stuff, and I just, I want to present things that ultimately make sense, but ultimately assist and help the collective into greater and deeper understanding that hopefully, honestly, lights a fire underneath their ass to realize what's happening here, what's going on, what we need to do to assist humanity, and where things are going, where things are heading. And this is a part of my light work. This is a part of me assisting humanity, caring about humanity, showing my empathy to humanity. And I just want to see us overcome and transcend all of the darkness and all of the evil forces on this earth. But I don't feel like I can sit back anymore and just be like, oh, everything's going to be fine. You know, the Galactic Federation and the Guardian Forces are going to come save us. They've taken back over the gate sites, this, and that. When you can clearly look at what's going on globally and see that these things are still being held in place and things are actually just clamping down and getting tighter and tighter. So I think it's irresponsible of me to say anything else, like I said earlier. And it's only because I want you to be able to see what's going on in the shadow. Okay, because I've been gifted the ability to dive deep into the darkness and into the shadow, not because I want to be a shadow worker. I really don't. I want to be feeling amazing and fully ascended and integrating light codes and, you know, being able to spread all kinds of, you know, magical artwork, because that's ultimately where I want to do. I want to be making art. I want to be like buying my spiritual costumes and presenting myself in my highest spiritual forms and creating and reciting activations and invocations. That's really what my heart wants to do. But I feel like I can't do any of those things because this dragon beast is in the way. Okay, the beast machine is in the way. The mechanics are in the way. The quantum mechanics, the etheric mechanics and radioactive decay and rings of Saturn. Okay, it's all in the way. The red wave spiral, it's in the way. And I'm down here just clearing crap out of it. And I feel like that's what everyone else needs to be doing, honestly. Everyone else needs to be not afraid to use their voice, not afraid to stand up for what they believe in. No matter how ridiculous you sound or you think others may interpret you. That's why I've opened up to just being more of myself on my channel with you guys, like being more vulnerable, being more humble, showing myself in different light, is because I kind of don't care how I'm portrayed anymore. It's just really about the information. And yeah, so that's pretty much it. But I love you all so much, and I hope you have a blessed and beautiful everything. If you are interested in my services, you can find those at IndigoAngel222.com. And you can always join my Patreon, patreon.com/IndigoAngel, where I do have self-removals for J seals and self-removals for Draco, Aryan occultist seals. And yeah, so it's a good place for resources for that type of energy work if you are interested. And I'll see you guys soon.